I sensed something was off the moment the room fell silent. My daughter had just finished playing the piano, her small hands still trembling above the keys. The last note had barely faded when I realized what was absent. No applause, no polite nods, just a heavy silence. Then, I heard it. A whisper from a woman behind me. "That's the poor girl, the one with the single mom." My chest tightened, my ears rang, and I was frozen, gripping the edge of my seat as if it could prevent me from breaking down. My daughter's name is Zariah. She's 9 years old, and last night she poured her heart into her school's annual talent show. She wrote her own song, practiced for weeks, and dedicated herself to it. I watched her stay up late after homework, headphones on, tapping out melodies on a tiny keyboard we bought at a yard sale. She believed in that song, but when she performed it on stage in front of her classmates, the judges, and a crowd of parents, there was no applause, not even a few scattered claps from pity, just silence. I watched her bow, as I had taught her, then glance up as if searching for some reaction. Our eyes met, and for a moment I thought I saw her swallow down disappointment, confusion, and shame. I was trying so hard not to cry, and just when I felt I'd have to stand up, take her hand, and walk her out like we were escaping a fire, something unexpected happened. A man stood up from the very back row. Alone, tall, older, dressed in a simple gray suit. He didn't smile or say anything. He just started walking down the aisle toward the stage. I remember the room shifting, whispers rising, and the judges glancing at one another, unsure of what was happening. I held my breath because something about his approach made me stop thinking about leaving. It felt like the beginning of a new chapter. My name is Maya Reeve. I'm 33, and I've been raising Zariah on my own since she was 2. We live in a quiet town in southern Indiana, where everyone waves but also notices the kind of car you drive and whether your kid's backpack is new or used. People smile at you in the grocery store and then ask others why you're still single. I've lived here my whole life, blending in most days, but moments like the talent show remind me I don't quite fit in like they do. I work 2 jobs. During the day, I'm a janitor at the local middle school, and at night, I work at a 24-hour diner, serving truckers and teens looking for fries at 2 a.m. It's not glamorous, but it's honest, pays the bills, and lets me take care of Zariah. She means everything to me. Zariah is soft-spoken and full of heart. She doesn't run with the popular kids or care about trends. She loves music. Not the pop songs or the radio hits, but the unique, soulful melodies that come from deep within. She started writing songs at 7, humming into a recorder and saying, "This one feels like rain," or "This one is what it sounds like when someone misses you." I bought her a used keyboard from a garage sale last spring for $60. It was missing a stand and had a sticky B-flat key, but when she turned it on, it lit up like magic. She played it every day after school, her fingers hovering as if discovering something sacred. She would play for hours, sometimes with her eyes closed, chasing a sound only she could feel. When the school announced the annual talent show, Zariah asked to sign up. I hesitated. She wasn't the type to seek attention, but she said, "I want them to hear what I wrote." That's how she referred to it. Not her performance or song, just what she wrote. She was so proud when she submitted the sign-up form. For weeks, she practiced while I made dinner, and I'd sometimes stop to listen because what she created was hauntingly beautiful. She didn't just play notes, she told a story. Yet, beneath her pride, I could see her nerves. She was the only kid in her class who brought lunch in a grocery store bag instead of a character lunchbox, and her shoes were clean but always a season behind. I knew stepping on that stage was about more than just music. It was about being seen. Still, she practiced, asking me to braid her hair nicely but not overly so. She laid out her best dress, the one from last Easter, and I stitched its torn hem by hand. On the night of the show, we arrived early. The auditorium was packed, with kids backstage in glittery costumes and parents chatting about private lessons and weekend camps. I sat alone in the audience, trying not to look too out of place. When Zariah's name was called, I stood up a bit to see her. She walked to the piano slowly, chin up, but fingers fidgeting. I whispered, "You've got this, baby." She sat at the bench, adjusted the microphone, and placed her fingers on the keys. Then she began to play. As Zariah started, the room began to change, but not as I had hoped. She played her first few notes slowly and softly, inviting the audience into a memory only she could recall. The melody floated across the auditorium like a lullaby, dipped in sorrow and hope. It didn't sound like anything the kids before her had performed. No karaoke, no flashy moves, just her, a piano, and a story told through her fingertips. I sat on the edge, she closed her eyes and let the notes carry her away. But as I scanned, the audience, I could feel something else. They weren't listening. A couple of parents whispered, 2 kids in the front row giggled, one judge glanced at his phone, and the woman next to me pulled out gum as if waiting for an elevator. Then, I heard it, clear as day. She's the poor girl, the one with the single mom. The word struck me like a blow. I turned slightly to see who had said it, but I already knew the type, someone who'd never had to explain to their kid why Santa only brought one gift, or had to choose between fixing the car and paying for field trip fees. I bit the inside of my cheek hard enough to taste metal. I wanted to stand up and defend her, to shout, "She is more than the story you've created about us." But my legs wouldn't move. My body was locked in place, my pulse racing in my throat. Zariah continued playing, her hands steady, pouring herself into every note as if it mattered, as if someone out there would understand. But they didn't. Not that night. She finished with a soft, unexpected chord that lingered in the air, delicate and unresolved, followed by silence. She bowed as we practiced, holding it for a second, then slowly scanned the room. No claps, not even a few out of politeness. Someone coughed, a chair creaked, and the judge in the middle cleared his throat, flipping to the next page in his folder. That was it. Zariah stood there for a moment too long, just long enough for me to see her expression change. Her once small and hopeful smile faded into a tight, confused line. Her eyes dropped to the floor as she walked off stage, and I felt her trying to hold it together from across the room. My heart broke. I wanted to leap from my chair, wrap her in my arms, and carry her away from this place and these people who couldn't see what I saw. I wanted to tell her they were wrong, that her music mattered, that she mattered, but I couldn't move. I sat there, numb, blinking back tears, afraid that if I cried, I'd never stop. I looked around at the moms with their makeup and expensive handbags, the dads filming with their smartphones, and the judges preparing for the next act. No one cared. That's when I felt it, a small shift from the back row. A man stood up. He didn't look like of my seat, heart racing with pride as the others. His suit was simple. He wasn't holding a phone, and he wasn't clapping or reacting like everyone else. He was just standing there, still as stone, watching the stage. Then he started walking toward the front. People turned and someone whispered, "Who is that?" The judges exchanged puzzled glances. The next act was supposed to be a group dance routine. No one was scheduled to speak. I sat up straighter, placing a hand over my chest. I didn't know who he was or what he was doing, but something told me he was there for her. At first, no. One stopped him. The man in the gray suit kept walking slowly down the aisle, hands tucked behind his back, steady as if used to being watched. He didn't seem hurried, didn't hesitate, but with every step the room grew quieter. Even the whispering parents fell silent. One by one, the judges looked confused. One of them half rose from her chair to intercept him, but then sat back, down, unsure. Kids backstage peeked around the curtain, wide-eyed. I kept my eyes on Zariah, who stood at the edge of the stage, off to the side, half in shadows, clutching her music folder to her chest. She wasn't crying, but she wasn't okay either. Her mouth was tight, and her shoulders curled inward, as if trying to fold herself into a smaller shape. The man reached the front and turned to face the judges. "Excuse me," he said, his voice calm but firm. "Would it be all right if I borrowed the microphone for a moment?" That was all he said. Nothing dramatic, no grand speech, just a simple, respectful request. The room froze. One judge, a young man in a maroon blazer, glanced at the others and gave a barely perceptible nod. A student volunteer handed the man the mic without a word. He walked slowly to center stage, turned to face the crowd, and lifted the microphone. "My name is Dr. Elias Monroe," he said, "and I wasn't supposed to be here tonight. My flight home got canceled, so I came to watch my granddaughter perform. But then I heard something that stopped me cold." He paused, and the room leaned in. "I've spent my life teaching piano at Juilliard. I've trained concert, pianists, film composers, symphony soloists, and in all those years, very few pieces have grabbed me the way that little girl's music did just now." The silence shifted. It was no longer awkward or empty, but reverent. He glanced toward the side of the stage, eyes kind. "Zariah," he said, "may I ask, did you write that piece yourself?" She nodded slowly, unsure whether to smile or run. He turned back to the audience. "Ladies and gentlemen, that was an original composition. That was a voice. That was art." A few gasps. One parent near me actually whispered, "Juilliard," as if it were a word she'd only seen in movies. Dr. Monroe continued, "I'd like to ask a favor. With your permission, Zariah, would you be willing to play your piece again? This time, may I accompany you?" I felt my breath catch. Zariah looked at me, a flicker in her eyes, and I gave her a small nod, trying not to break down in tears. She walked slowly back onto the stage, her footsteps barely making a sound. Dr. Monroe stepped aside, letting her sit first. Then he sat beside her, not taking over the bench, but sharing it. His hands hovered above the keys, waiting for her lead. Then she began to play. This time, the notes didn't sound small. With Dr. Monroe's quiet chords layered beneath hers, it was as if her melody found a voice waiting to echo it. He didn't overpower her. He followed her, supported her, lifted her music like a second set of wings. You could feel the shift in the room. Laughter ceased. Parents leaned forward, and judges put down their pens. No one looked away. When they reached the final note, there was a beat of perfect stillness, and then the entire auditorium erupted in applause, like a wave. Shouts, whistles, hands clapping. People who hadn't noticed her before were now on their feet, clapping as if she'd just won a national award. Phones came out to record. I saw one judge wipe her eyes. I stood too, clapping so hard it hurt. And Zariah, she turned to Dr. Monroe and gave him the smallest, most sincere smile I've ever seen. In that moment, she wasn't the poor girl anymore. She was a musician. She was seen. I knew everything had just changed. When the applause finally began to fade, Zariah sat still at the piano, hands resting gently in her lap, eyes wide. Not in fear, but in wonder. She looked around the auditorium as if seeing it for the first time. Dr. Monroe leaned toward her and said something we couldn't hear. She nodded once, then slowly stood, bowing again. This time, the gesture wasn't timid. It was proud, intentional. She looked up with her chin high, and the room gave her everything it hadn't the first time. As they walked off stage together, people turned to each other, asking who she was. Parents who had ignored us in the school pickup line were now craning their necks to get a better look at her. Kids whispered in awe. Even one of the judges followed her backstage with a clipboard, smiling as if they'd discovered hidden treasure. I stood in the crowd, still clapping, heart pounding, eyes full. I didn't care what anyone thought of me in that moment. All I saw was my daughter being recognized, not for what we didn't have, but for who she was. When she came down from the stage, she ran straight into my arms. "I did it," she whispered into my chest. I couldn't speak. I just held her tighter. Dr. Monroe approached a moment later, smiling. He extended his hand, but before I could shake it, he said, "Your daughter has an extraordinary gift, one I don't often see. That was more than just talent. That was truth." I finally found my voice. Thank you for seeing her, for giving her that moment." He nodded. "It wasn't mine to give. She created it. All I did was ensure no one missed it." He then reached into his coat pocket and handed me a card, embossed with his name and a New York address. "If you're open to it," he said, "I'd like to connect her with someone at a youth arts foundation I work with. They offer weekend intensives and private mentorship for gifted young composers. She won't have to audition. I've already heard what I needed to." I was stunned, looking down at the card, then back at him. "She's never taken a formal lesson," I said. "I mean, we can't really afford much right now." He smiled. "That won't be a problem. This is about access. She deserves to be nurtured, not just noticed." Zariah looked up at me, unsure, asking for permission with just her eyes. I nodded, trying not to cry. "Thank you, baby." "Thank you," she said, her voice small but steady. Dr. Monroe tipped his head and turned back toward the crowd. That night, after we got home, Zariah didn't want to take off her dress. She sat on the living room floor, keyboard in her lap, humming something new. I brought us bowls of cereal because I couldn't muster the energy to cook, and we ate cross-legged on a blanket like a picnic under the ceiling fan. She played a few bars of her new song and looked up at me. "Do you think I can really go to the place the Music Man said?" she asked. I reached over, tucked a curl behind her ear, and said, "You already did." It's been 5 months since that night when my daughter changed everything by simply being who she is. We still live in the same small house. I still work both jobs, and sometimes bring home leftovers from the diner. Zariah still wears secondhand shoes, but things feel different now. Not because we have more money or possessions, but because for the first time, my daughter sees herself differently. Since that night, she's been attending weekend mentorship sessions at a music conservatory an hour outside of town. Every Saturday, we wake up before sunrise, I pack a thermos of hot cocoa, and we drive together, just the two of us, music playing softly in the car, her face pressed against the window, watching the cornfields roll by. She's not the same girl who stepped onto that stage, terrified no one would listen. Now she talks about dynamics and the emotion behind a minor chord. Her teachers say she's composing pieces with depth that they usually don't see in students twice her age. She still plays that first piece sometimes, the one no one clapped for, but now she plays it differently, more confidently, more assuredly. Not louder, just fuller, like she owns every note. And she does. Something changed in me too. For years I believed we had to keep our heads down, stay quiet, and be grateful, not ask for more than we were given. I thought if I could just protect her from judgment, failure, and being othered, that would be enough. But I was wrong. What she needed wasn't protection, it was permission. To be heard, to take up space, to believe in the sound of her own voice, even if the room stayed silent. I almost let that moment slip away. I almost let her believe that silence meant she wasn't enough. But one stranger, one person who chose to pay attention, ensured that didn't happen. And that's what I keep reflecting on. It wasn't a miracle or luck. It was a choice. Dr. Monroe didn't just hear her music. He recognized it and then acted quietly, powerfully, not to rescue her, but to amplify her. Sometimes that's all it takes. One person willing to listen deeply, to step forward when everyone else stays seated, to remind a child they are not invisible. Sometimes all it takes to keep going is knowing someone sees your light, even if only for a moment. That night didn't change our lives overnight, but it gave my daughter something I could never wrap in a box or write into a bedtime story. It gave her the belief that she is worthy of being seen. It gave me something too. It reminded me that our story doesn't end with other people's silence. When no one claps, it doesn't mean you stop playing. You keep going, because one day, someone might hear you, and that person might be the reason everything changes. So now, every time I watch Zariah place her fingers on the keys, I don't worry about who's watching. I know she's not playing to impress anymore. She's playing to tell the truth, and that's the kind of music the world needs more of. If this story resonated with you, if it made you feel, reflect, or remember your own moment of being overlooked or finally seen, please share it with someone who needs to be reminded that quiet voices still matter. Comment below and share your story. Tell me about the person who stood up for you or the moment you found your own voice. I read every word. And if you want more stories that touch the heart, stories that make you pause and really feel something, subscribe to the channel. We have more to share. Thank you for watching, thank you for caring, and most of all, thank you for listening. Your support means the world, and together, we can create a space where every voice is heard, every story matters, and every dream has the chance to soar.